In Chapter 8 of Inflammation Nation, what did you mean by Step 6, decrease inflammation through the use of Bosmeric SR?
Okay. So Bosmeric SR is our flagship product. This is something that we worked on over a decade. We've had 6 years in the research and development as we're looking at 4 ingredients, 3 which are patented, and looking at how can we make the strongest natural anti-inflammatory available. We use 4 key ingredients. One of them is curcumin C3 complex, which is the gold standard now of curcumin. Now, a lot of people will hear curcumin. They don't know the difference between a curcumin and a turmeric, which I'll explain later. But when we combine these ingredients at the right doses, I mean, these are products that have clinical trials. So it's not just in a test tube, it's not in an animal anymore. Now we actually have human patient clinical studies, which are used in hospitals and research centers around the world. So in our practice, we don't use generic supplements. So what I mean by that is like going back to using the example of ibuprofen. When we get over-the-counter or prescription drugs, synthetic molecules can be patented. So ibuprofen is a molecule that, regardless of the brand name, whether it's Motrin or Advil, ibuprofen, which is that molecule, is the same. That's why we buy generics, because it's cheaper. I don't need to buy the brand name. I want to get something that's the same, but just doesn't have the fancy marketing, right? So most of us do that. But when it comes to supplements, it's the complete opposite. You cannot patent a natural product. You can grow turmeric, you can grow green tea, you can grow blueberries and strawberries and bilberries and acai berries and bananas or whatever. You can grow them in your yard. So we cannot patent a natural product, but we can patent how certain compounds are extracted, the process of how those are taken out of those plants or vegetables or products. And then that can limit how other people do that. So the misconception right now in the market is that there's a lot of products that are great, that actually have studies that are patented, and the companies put a lot of R&D in, and we actually go all the way to clinical trials. But once it's been proven, then the industry looks at, well, let me just take a generic. But that doesn't work because the patent has blocked them for extracting those processes. But the consumer doesn't know that. So they go, oh, 95% curcuminoids. Isn't that kind of what's in your product? It's completely different. Because when we patent it, we take out 3 specific curcuminoids at a specific ratio, and that's what works. And now independent university studies will show when we take the 4 largest manufacturers of just generic 95% curcumin, for example, in the United States, that sell to every product company that you know of, that if anybody takes a product that says 95% is coming from one of these 4, it has very low inflammatory responses, it has very low immunological responses based in comparison to the gold standard, is what we use. So a lot of people, oh, I've taken that. No, you haven't taken the right one, right? So this is where the guidance of what we use. So the second ingredient is boswellia, which is frankincense. There's 3 parts of the frankincense. There's boswellic acids, or AKBBA, and there's something called polysol. It's a new polysaccharide that we use. And the interesting thing is, it's not just saying, I found a fraction that's important, and let me increase it as much as possible. We actually, well, it took 6 years, because we have to look at, sometimes in pharmaceutical world, we look at how can I strengthen the potency of something, so I give a lot of one thing. But that may not be the right thing. What we have to look at is, can we mimic in nature what is the appropriate ratio to get the best response? So initially when we do studies, sometimes we say, let's put everything at 90%. Let's just like turn the volume up to 10, right? And in fact, it doesn't have as much inflammatory benefits as we would want. So we kind of up and down the doses in the studies to find the right exact dose that actually has the maximum benefit in vitro and in vivo in the studies. Right? So we actually do that. Most people are like, oh, I heard frankincense is good. Why don't you take essential oils? Essential oils don't have that same component. So a lot of people who are not trained in herbal medicine don't understand there's a difference between a leaf, a stem, the bark, the plant, the root. All these things have different phytochemical phytonutrients. Where you're getting that product makes a difference. But it doesn't matter, because on the supplement, I'll just say this product, right? So that's where we lose the efficacy, potency, and purity, and sometimes the safety by not having that. The third ingredient is ginger. So everybody understands ginger. I love ginger. Ginger's an anti-inflammatory. We like people to eat ginger. It must be organic. All these roots and rhizomes should be organic because they're sprayed heavily with pesticides and herbicides. They're crops. However, when we look at in a product, ginger should have something called gingerols. That's like the curcuminoids of the turmeric. And remember, these are small components. So for example, going back to curcumin is 2 to 5% of turmeric. So it's not the same thing. So a lot of people use this, willy-nilly, like, oh, this is a curcumin extract, this is turmeric extract. They don't know the difference, right? And so when we take these compounds, it takes out of 100 pounds of turmeric that we grow, for example, 2 pounds of curcuminoids can be extracted. Now what we like to do is like same thing with the ginger. We extract the gingerols from that ginger plant. We have 20% gingerols right now, which is the highest percentage worldwide. Most companies put in about 5%. Most companies don't put in any. It's just ginger powder. If you have a product that says ginger extract or ginger powder, I just say just go chop some ginger up and have some ginger tea. Have some spicy food. Like make good say Thai food for example or Indian food. You don't need to take a supplement for that. That's the redundancy that we're trying to remove. And then when we give something, we want to give it as a targeted therapy. The last ingredient is called bioprene. It's a patented form of black pepper. Like the curcumin, generic black pepper does not have the same effects. It's how we extract those piperine compounds that gives it the best absorption. In fact, curcumin C3 complex gets a 2,000% absorption with bioprene. But other companies that use black pepper can't use that claim because they haven't studied it. And now that we actually look at the data, it shows that it doesn't do that to that level. So more importantly is looking at the concept of synergy. Synergy means that when we look at each of the ingredients, now it's combining them in specific ratios so that we can get the best maximum amount. So it's not putting a lot of one thing or a little bit of one thing. It's like we had to do studies. We're looking at how much of each of these ingredients, and Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicine is good at that because they understand formulation, they understand balance. When we put formulas together, that means we can take a product for a long period of time because we're also balancing some of the other side effects that can be taken even with herbs over long periods of time, right? Or the tolerance where it just runs out of its efficacy. So a lot of people are like, I take grams of this one product, In the beginning they might get better, but after a period of time it wears off. Because that's where, when you understand herbal medicine and other traditional medicines, we look at how do we balance that effect so it's more efficacious for long-term use. Now, with Bosmeric, the key is also delivery. So we've been able to put into a bilayered sustained-release caplet. What that means is that it has a fat-soluble and water-soluble component. So someone takes the product within 20 minutes onset of action. So a lot of people are like, oh, I take a fast tab, my acetaminophen, my Tylenol, or my ibuprofen, I have a fast tab, or I leave a fast tab. So we've been able to design it so now you can have that fast-acting action, and then we have a sustained release so it lasts over 8 hours. A lot of people say, particularly cancer patients, they'll read studies on curcumin, even curcumin C3 complex, and there'll be studies published, oh, someone took 8 grams a day, help them with their cancer, for example. And they had to take 2 grams and 2 grams and 2 grams, and and it goes in the blood and it goes down, and it goes in the blood and it goes down. What we're trying to do now is what is the minimum amount that we need to get the maximum benefit. So when we sustain release it, it goes in the blood, and then it has this peak, and then it just maintains. Right? So we're looking at how do we use it more effectively. Lastly, why we bilayer it in a tablet is because almost 90% of the products in the market, we're the only one that has the bilayered product actually, put it in capsules. So if you put turmeric and you put boswellia, you put ginger and black pepper in a capsule, or you put bromelain or papain or any kind of proteolytic enzyme, nattokinase, which you'll see all these products. Even there's copycats on Amazon right now that look at our product, let's put it in a capsule and sell something generic of it, but let's just sell it really cheaply, is that those ingredients actually degrade each other as it sits in the capsule. So there's a science to manufacturing, there's a science to the art of medicine of how we put herbs together. So when someone makes this capsule, it's say in New Jersey, New York in a factory, and then it takes about 3 months to leave the factory, then it goes into distribution, and then it goes on a truck, and then eventually they go to like a health store to go buy it. It could be 9 months, 12 months by the time that the client actually gets it. There's already a potency that's just degrading as it sits on the shelf. So ours is like a medicine. When we look at nutraceuticals, and that's my specialty, how we formulate, it's like how do I give you 100% of what you take at the time that you take it, when you take it. And that's how we get efficacy, potency, purity, and safety.